A lot of people believe that Vegito has more of Vegeta's characteristics, while Gogeta seems more like Goku. But is that really true after all? What happens to Goku and Vegeta after they fuse? Do they remain conscious during the process, or do they completely disappear? And more importantly, is there a dominant mind within the fusion? Does one of them take mental control of the fused warrior, or do they both participate equally? This is a question I receive very frequently, and today you're finally going to get the answer. So make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. As simple as this question may seem, I completely understand why many people are still confused about it. After all, the Namekians have already shown us that, in certain types of fusion, there really is a dominant mind. The best example is Piccolo. When he fuses with Nail, it is Piccolo himself who takes mental control of the fusion. The same thing happens when he fuses with Kami. In fact, there's an interesting detail. Among Namekians, the one who extends their hand to perform the assimilation is the one who maintains control of the new entity. In other words, there was a possibility that Kami could have become the dominant mind if he had been the one to extend his hand. However, he considered it wiser to leave that role to Piccolo since he was younger and more powerful. But does the same thing happen with Metamoran and Potara fusions? The answer is no. And let me explain why. Many fans believe that Vegito resembles Vegeta more, both in appearance and personality. Meanwhile, Gogeta is often viewed as being more similar to Goku. Personally, I don't see it that way. After all, Vegito is playful, provocative, and enjoys mocking his opponents. Gogeta, on the other hand, tends to be calmer, more serious, and more direct. If we follow that logic, we could actually argue the exact opposite, that Gogeta is closer to Vegeta's personality, while Vegito resembles Goku more. But the truth is that the behavior of each fusion is much more closely related to the method used to create it. Notice that Gogeta tends to be more balanced because the Metamoran fusion dance requires balance from the very beginning. The participants must have similar power levels, similar body sizes, and perform a perfectly synchronized dance. The result of this entire process is a warrior who is more balanced, focused, and decisive. On the other hand, Potara fusion doesn't require any of that. You simply put on the earrings correctly and the magic happens. The Potara earrings don't care about differences in size, power, or skill. As long as the basic requirements are met, the fusion takes place because it is sustained by divine magic. That is why Vegito ends up being a more unstable fusion when using massive amounts of energy. Even though the fusion is theoretically supposed to last 1 hour for mortals, that time can be drastically reduced when Vegito uses too much power. That's exactly what happened during the battle against Zamasu. And before someone says, but Super Saiyan 4 Gogeta also diffuse very quickly. Yes, that's true. But we're talking about the fusion of two Super Saiyan 4 warriors. The amount of energy involved was absolutely enormous. It was only natural that the fusion couldn't sustain that level of power for very long. Now let's get to the most important question. Who mentally controls the fusion? The answer is simple. Neither Goku nor Vegeta, because both Potara fusion and Metamoran fusion work as a sum. A plus B equals C. And that C is not Goku and it is not Vegeta, but at the same time, it is both of them. Let me explain. Imagine mixing flour and eggs to make a cake. The result isn't just flour, and it isn't just eggs, but both ingredients are still present in the mixture. Something very similar happens with fusion. Strength, speed, reflexes, intelligence, experience, personality, and abilities are combined to create a new individual. That is why Gogeta and Vegito are completely new characters. They have their own thoughts, their own attitudes, and their own ways of acting. However, there's one important detail. Even though they are new individuals, they still carry the memories and consciousness of both Goku and Vegeta. That's why, after the fusion ends, both of them remember everything that happened. However, during the fusion itself, decisions are not made by Goku or Vegeta individually. They are made by the new personality created through the union of the two. This even explains the attacks they use. They don't simply launch a Kamehameha or a Final Flash. They create hybrid techniques such as the Final Kamehameha precisely because they represent the combination of both warriors. Even the characters' voices convey this idea since they combine characteristics of both individuals. For that reason, I don't believe there is a dominant mind. What exists is a combined mind. a personality that blends Goku's carefree nature with Vegeta's pride, confidence, and seriousness. But maybe some of you are thinking, what about Kefla? Caulifla clearly seems to dominate that fusion. And I understand why it looks that way, but that's because Caulifla's personality is naturally stronger and more outgoing than Kale's. Even so, Kefla remains a mixture of both of them. In fact, the only Potara fusion that truly seems to possess a dominant personality is the fusion between the Supreme Kais. When Shin fuses with Kibito, for example, the characteristics of the Supreme Kai are far more evident, but we also need to be honest. Kibito was always a very reserved character throughout the series. As a result, it becomes difficult to identify strong traces of his personality after the fusion. The most visible traits inherited from Kibito are abilities such as Kai and his longer hair. Other than that, the personality still feels much more like Shin. So when it comes to Gogeta and Vegito, I continue to believe that there is no dominant mind. What exists is a complete combination of Goku and Vegeta's, creating a third personality that is entirely new. But now I want to hear your opinion. Do you agree with this interpretation, or do you see it differently? Let me know down in the comments. And once again, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end. A big thank you to all of you. Take care, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.